Sahana vavatu, sahanao bhunaktu, sahaviryankaravavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishawahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The inquiry now is verse 20, and we are discerning what is real and what is unreal. And we have introduced a new model, and by doing so, we have introduced two more words, which is asti and bhati, and they're equivalent to sat and chit. And again, they're just being differentiated to add a little bit of novelty into our learning. And so the analysis is then, what is this word priya? And priya means something that is very dear to you. Your kids are dear to you. Your wife is dear to you. Your husband is dear to you. Your teacher is dear to you. Your friends are dear to you. So we all have something that is very dear to us. And when you say it's dear, it really just means that in its presence, it gives you a certain level of satisfaction, a certain level of fulfillment. It fulfills you. It fully fills you, at least for the time being, while it's in its ideal condition, because sometimes things are not in their ideal conditions. So, right, there's so many variables that we have to wait for them to be ideal, and then we have that little enjoyment. Now, the analysis was, since people all relate with the word happiness, right? We all want happiness, but the real motivator behind happiness is I want to be free from a sense of, separation. I don't want that, other in my space. I don't want otherness. I want to be, one with the situation. I don't want a sense of otherness. Therefore, the drive for happiness is not for happiness' sake, it is for the sake of being at one with yourself in that moment where there's nothing that I want right now, right? In this moment, while being happy, there's no troubled kids, there's no employer, there's no complaining employees, there's no salary problems, there's no problems in this moment. And therefore, the question then comes, if there's two definitions of priya, and the first definition is, we'll put priya here, right? So I'm going to say priya is equated to ananda. Both of these have two definitions. Even if you say sat chit ananda, this ananda has definition 1 and definition 2. And definition 1 is this dear, something is dear, it's happiness. Happiness, and the second without a second, okay? So when you say limitlessness, all you really mean is there's no second, okay? It is one of itself. So the question now is, what is the relationship between definition, maybe we'll put this definition 2 and this definition 1. What's the connection between them? And you have to understand this because the word Sat Chit Ananda otherwise becomes definition 1, and you sort of want to like a trip, right? Moksha means there's a trip there to going through this happy experience. And we started out by analyzing the inquiry, what is the source of happiness? And we know it's not objects, okay? Because an object for you can have happiness right now, but 5 minutes later, that same object does not have that power anymore. Or the object, you can be told about a certain object in your life, and then when you actually see that object, and you get more information about that object, then it spoils your imagination. So there's a mismatch there. It also cannot be sense organs are the source of happiness. If sense organs, which are always true, right, they're always with you, if they are the source of happiness, then you will always be happy because you always got your sense organs with you. In that case, you won't need objects to be happy. But we need objects to be happy. Therefore, it cannot be sense organs either. Okay? It cannot be, what do we say? Time. I think we understood this. It cannot be a place because time and place two places. You go to your childhood home. Once upon a time when you were a child, that thing was so comfortable, so pleasing. And then as an adult, you go back. It's just a house. It's just a house. It doesn't have that power of place happiness anymore. So it's neither this. So what happens is when there's happiness, we're always carrying an insistent wanter. A person who wants, who needs, who desires, and has rules. The rules how things should be and shouldn't be. We call this shouldism. And so the person walks around with shouldisms, and as long as those shouldisms are not keeping with their little ticks, little check marks, then they sustain this wanter, this little insistent voice narrative. So what happens is when those ticks are finally ticked, right, somehow through some desire fulfilled, then what happens is for a moment, right, this I sense, it's still there, but the wanter is temporarily resolved. And therefore, in this moment, while happy, there is no sense of want. There is no sense of otherness. You see this? Because that's all want is. It means there's a presence of something else. Okay? So this, for a moment, has disappeared until a new, what we call samskara comes in, a new voice of inadequacy, and it says, well, actually, you need also this way of fulfillment. And therefore, when we are happy, what happens is this wanter is resolved for a moment, and you experience yourself full. Knowing that you have this fullness, how do you connect this to Vedanta? What does it mean for a wise person to, appreciate all things all the time without having the sense of I need something for my completion? Because that's the difference between wisdom and non-wisdom. Wisdom is I don't need you for my fulfillment. That's wisdom. Non-wisdom is I need you for my fulfillment. And it's not just an affirmation, it's a living reality. Because what happens is if I need you, then I feel isolated. Even if I'm sitting next to you on a couch, I feel sort of disconnected, right? Because I think you need to communicate with me in a certain way. You have to say to me something. You have to show me your love in a certain way. But you know that this is probably hardly ever the case because people's reality is very different from yours. So now I want people's reality to match mine. That's kind of being demanding, yeah, right? So what Vedanta now says is the seeker and the sought, the wanter and the wanted, they're both upadis, Maya projection. The one who wants is an upadi. That which is wanted is also an upadi. Therefore, an example. So if I want, suppose a relationship now, which is okay. I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong about it, but just suppose someone's got a real urge for a relationship. What we often say is, we justify in our minds, I want that because of this, and this. But if you bring in this knowledge, you understand that there is no actual difference between the wanted and the wanter. They're both Maya upadis, and the truth of both Maya upadis is always going to be Sat and Chit. And that is my nature right now. Before, my focus was on forms, right? The wave. It's a very pleasant wave, a fancy wave, a polished wave, and all of this other very nice stuff that a wave has, which is okay. And you can still pursue a wave if that is your thing, because there is still a person, right? And we acknowledge that person in Vedanta. And if that person would have enjoying a better, a healthier life, then go and pursue a relationship. There's no problems about that, right? So we're not saying, oh, just because I understand this knowledge, I don't need you at all. Hey, we constantly need people for our fulfillment. You just understand this satya-mithya relationship, okay? Therefore, a wise person understands that what they wanter right now is just one of the many projections, and the wanted is just one of the many projections also. There are two different waves who are both depending entirely on the one truth. And therefore, that allows you to appreciate your limitless nature, your ananda, your without a second nature. How so? Experientially? Cognitively. How are you going to experience that which is infinite experientially if you got a limited mind? For now, while the wise person is alive, they appreciate it cognitively. It's only when the Maya Upadhi is gone, okay, when the body and the mind is gone, only then it can become what we call total mukti. Total mukti means now there is no more confinement to hold me down. There's no more confinement to limit my experience. So we have to be very careful here, because we're given this impression that a wise person has this, this ananda experientially. That's not possible, because you got Maya Upadhi. Is this clear? So first notion dropped. Otherwise, one's always going to be seeking. They say no. And then on top of that, there's this notion that a wise person is happy always, right? And they're kind of attracting such a big crowd, and they have a certain way of speaking, a certain way of behavior. No. In Tattva Bodha, we said the only way that you can tell a wise person is you can't tell who a wise person is. That's the only way. Because who is wise, their understanding is keeping with what is. But I'm not inside their mind. I will never be inside their mind. If reality is like this, and I understand reality to be like that, is that wise? There's a discord. If reality is like this, and I understand it to be something else, and I speak wise, I speak wisdom, I'm not wise. Therefore, only when your reality, your understanding of what is keeping with what is, only then you are truly wise. But is anyone ever going to know this? No. Therefore, the one who is not wise can never tell who a wise person is, because they're operating from a different model. And they see you operating from a different model. Like, what is this nonsense? We're all one, right? What is this nonsense? Therefore, but you're just understanding the reality as it is. Therefore, we're not interested in talking about, it's very unfortunate, I see on YouTube, constantly, people establish entire channels talking about who's enlightened and who's not. This is like favorite topic. Papaji was this, Ramana was truly that, and who else do we have nowadays? Osho was like, it's like nonsense, right? Look at these people. All their time is just stating, qualifying other people who's enlightened or not. This is nonsense. It's none of our business who has the knowledge and who doesn't. My only job is to remain humble, understand until the last breath. Until then, I'm not interested whether, who's enlightened or not. Just understand the truth. It's a relationship that we have with this knowledge, with the teacher. And through this relationship, we develop, we sculpt, we remove notions, and I keep saying it's a very personal, private, quiet journey. The moment it goes loud out there, then you get all sorts of opinions, and it becomes very discouraging, and then you sort of want to walk out. It's a very quiet, personal journey between you, the teacher, and the tradition. The relationship between the wise person and the world is like between the actor and the role. So an actor has the capacity to play many roles. In fact, because of the actor, many roles get played. And suppose that one of the roles you have not quite looked into, and they have a strong emotional connection to you. There's lack of objectivity. So what happens is the role's stuff, it spills over into the actor. And the actor is the very source upon which all of the other roles depend on. So if one of those roles spills over into the actor, then by the time you relinquish that role for a moment and you take on another role, what's going to happen? Who are you bringing along? You're bringing all of your stuff along. I've lost my objectivity. And therefore, what wisdom means is having a certain level of objectivity in reference to the roles that I'm playing all day long, right? This is right now a role. It doesn't define me. Right now, you're playing a role. It doesn't define you. One time, I'm playing the role of a student in Nima's class. Another time, I'm playing the role of a speaker, an expounder of the knowledge. Another time, I'm playing the role of one who's concerned about a friend. Another time, you're playing the role of the one that wants to understand something. Therefore, we have a certain objectivity in reference to the different roles that we play from morning to evening. And if we can do that, then you are relatively wise. You're relatively wise, right? Because that is what you need in order to have a certain level of clarity. The moment the actor gets contaminated by one role or the other, then that contamination, it spoils, right, the other roles, and therefore we lose our center, we lose our ground. So therefore, this is why I said yoga, Vedanta is a yoga of objectivity. See, when they're yours, but is that me? It's not you. Therefore, the attitude is, this is my pain. This is my discomfort, but it's not me. That's called objectivity. One little change. This is my pain, but it's not me. In that attitude, I have a little bit more clarity and spaciousness to work and get the right things done. So I like this commentary for verse 20, the last. So physically, Brahman can't be separated from the world due to its all-pervasiveness. Therefore, it is a cognitive separation. That's very nice. Just like with a spot, you can never separate the pot from the clay, because if you take out the clay, there's no pot. So it's because of the clay's presence that the pot is. It's because of the clay's presence that this pot has a certain useful function. So in that same manner, how are you going to separate this? You can't, because the reality is satya mithya relationship. So there is sat, and sat obtains as different forms. I can't separate that because, as it says, Brahman is all pervasive. Therefore, I have to first be told about the pot, which is obvious. We all have forms. This is very obvious. But I also have to be told about the clay, don't I? So the teaching has to first point out that there are two things here. And if we analyze this thing right now, it's very simple. We go satya mithya. We say this pot is mithya in reference to the satyam, which is the clay. But then you analyze the clay further, and you say clay is now mithya in reference to the molecules. And then molecules are mithya in reference to the atoms. And then atoms are mithya in reference to concepts. If you go deeper in reference to concepts. And then concept is mithya in reference to the seer of the concept. So there, you see through this analysis. So what is true throughout this analysis? I can get rid of the pot, but I can't get rid of the intelligence because of which this pot is. I can get rid of the clay, but I can't get rid of the intelligence because of which is putting the molecules together, like silica, to create clay. I get rid of the clay, and then I arrive to something that makes up I get rid of the molecules, and I arrive to something that makes up the molecules, which is atoms. So I got rid of the pot, the clay, the molecules, the atoms. Get rid of. So if I look into the pot, I can't find it. If I look into the clay, I can't find it. If I look into the molecules, I can't find it. If I look into the atoms, I can't find it. So I can't find one final building block in this universe. But at every level, I can find the intelligence putting it together in such a way as to create atoms into molecules, molecules into silica, silica into clay.
So the common denominator is drink.
And intelligence remaining all throughout the analysis. Can you think of intelligence unless it is in the presence of a conscious being? So therefore, the truth of this form is intelligence. The truth of intelligence is Drig, cognitive separation, just by that little analysis. Okay? That's why we have to bring Satya-Mithya relationship. There's two things here. It's not like they're two different things. There are two things, but they enjoy a independent, dependent relationship. That's what it means by cognitive. Suppose you have something that's challenging. What happens is, in this tradition, sometimes the person will go on a trip and use this knowledge to not address their emotions or their problems, their empirical problems. And so what happens is, when you have some emotional pain in your life, do you look into your stories that you're telling yourself? What could be the cause of this emotional pain? And thereby attempt to reframe it in a more empowering way. Suppose someone hurts you and you have a certain reaction. It kind of shuts you down. Do you look into the stories that you're telling yourself that would cause you to shut yourself down, and then attempt to reframe the situation as to empower yourself, or look at it in a way that helps you come out of this smallness? Or do you just take this thought and you say, oh, this is just a thought appearing in my awareness, and then get rid of it and then move on? Which one do you do? Remember, the magic word starts with a D. Which one do you do? It depends, okay? Because in reference to our children or our close loved ones, I can't just brush it off, this is a thought in my awareness. It's too emotionally strong. But in reference to smaller things in my life, not so close to me, I can do that. I can say, this is just a thought appearing in my awareness. You see? So there's never a black or white here. You need to understand, where do I need to work with this person? And where can I look at it as a thought arising in consciousness? You see? So this is what we call intelligent living. No question of black or white or brush it all off. I look at it. If I don't look at it, what happens? Comes back tomorrow. And what kind of and this is just one thought. It's not like this with us. There's many thoughts. And living a life like this with many thoughts unaddressed, this is not a life that's very pleasant. We don't want an enlightened, depressed person. I don't know what that looks like. All right? So we want someone that encourages us, someone that uplifts us, someone that, is an example for others to live. That's what we want. After all, you are part of the order, part of this grand order that has been taking care of you since day one. So where's the question of, I'm going to have it my way, you go and take care of yourself? It's my obligation to give back to the world, because Ishvara has been taking care of you and I since the beginning. Therefore, I choose to gladly give back, because Ishvara is the one that gives you freedom. And there's no greater gift than freedom itself. Ishvara through the teacher, Ishvara through the tradition, Ishvara through traveling, Ishvara through those two pilots who were not drunk and got you here to India. So they got you safely to India. That is Ishvara. It's not just teacher and this, everyone's involved. And therefore, Ishvara becomes worthy of praise, worthy of gratitude, and worthy of devotion, because he or she is the one that truly delivers you to, the final understanding. There's no question of discarding Ishvara. Oh, I'm above Ishvara because Ishvara is mithya. We don't say this in Vedanta. We don't say this. Ishvara is a relationship that you have with yourself, because you're also an expression of Ishvara.
Is Ishvara the same thing as God?
Yes, in English, the word God, which means, someone had a great definition of God, generator, operator, destroyer. And that's exactly what we have in the Vedas. We have Brahma, creator, we have Vishnu, sustainer, and we have Shiva, the one who sweeps away the changes to give way for the new. So God is generator, operator, destroyer, and Ishvara in Sanskrit means the cause of the universe. We say that God specifically is material cause and efficient cause. In Sanskrit, nimitta karanam, which is the intelligent cause or the efficient cause, right? Intelligent or the efficient cause. Because why efficient? Because everything is made efficiently. Nothing's out of place. Everything is optimized. It is the path of least resistance for all things in this world. Everything is very well put together, so it's efficient. Upadana karanam, which is the material cause. That means all material is, including your flesh and your brain, and your thoughts, is God. Therefore, God is the material and the intelligent cause of the universe. Verse 21. Ka, Vayu, Agni, Jala, Urvishu, Deva, Tiriyan, Nara, Adishu, Abhinaha, Satchit Anandaha, Bhidyate, Rupa, Namani. So this is the last verse that will complete this inquiry of discerning what is unreal and real. And it wants to do this, showing you how creation came. The final reality is existence consciousness. Existence consciousness enjoys this power called Maya, Upadi, from which manifests the universe. But the first thing that comes, when we say in Chandogya Upanishad, Sat Eva, Saumya Agra Asit. Saumya is just a name, so you can say Sat Eva, Agra Asit, Ekameva Dvitiyam. So it means before all of this came, there was only one non-dual existence. Non-dual just means without a second. One undifferentiated existence. And from this one undifferentiated existence came the world. Now, the first thing that came, obviously out of Maya Upadi, space. And space is a very close metaphor for consciousness. So we use space a lot to kind of help the person who's asking the question, what is consciousness? It's like space. And then you say, why? And you say, well, if you look at space, you can't contaminate space with anything. Whatever you throw into space, loud words, pretty words, bad words, space itself just accommodates those words. Whatever happens in the room, you can have a kirtanam here, a satsang, or you can have a little boxing match. And it's not going to contaminate the space in any way. The space itself is never divided, right? For example, these walls, they do not divide the space from the outside to the inside, but rather the house is in the space. Similarly, the house has many rooms, and so, right? So they seem to have all individual space. The bedroom has a space, the toilet has a space, the bed, right, so on. They all have a space, but they're all in space. Therefore, space does not get divided. The inside space and the outside space is exactly the same. Space itself is attributeless. That means there's nothing that space has, because if space were to have an attribute, then I would ask you, what attribute does it have? Then you have to say. Now, and then I will say, okay, so then if I have a clean room, then I should see that attribute in that room. But I don't. You see this? You understand this? It doesn't have attributes like a color or some object. Otherwise, if that object should be everywhere. Because is space here different from the space in someone's house in China? Is the space here different than the space on the moon? It is one space accommodating Earth, accommodating the rooms, accommodating your body, accommodating the moon. Is the space here, tricky question, different from Brahmaloka? Space is space. The perception of it is different, okay? In the light of Drig, okay?
To go there and find out.
So whether you say space is different or the same, it is still in the presence of Drig, okay? So either way, it is an object of my awareness. Space accommodates. Whatever you put, it accommodates that. Just like consciousness. It accommodates all your thoughts. It accommodates a saint's thoughts. It equally accommodates a sinner's thoughts. Therefore, in the presence of consciousness, a saint can do what a saint does, and a sinner can do what a sinner does. Just like consciousness, it never gets contaminated by your thoughts. And this is a relief because we think, oh no, I am a dirty person, I am a sinner. I don't even want to be a saint because that means you got punya. And punya gives you a new body, right? So just like space, consciousness is attributeless, which means there's nothing you can ever do to taint your consciousness. So this means technically you don't have any punyam on your account. You don't have any papam on your account. Now a question comes, oh great, I'm pure, I'm clean. So I can now mess around, right? Because I'm attributeless. You see, to ask this question, it's not something that an adhikari is a seeker of truth, is a lover of knowledge. A person like that wouldn't even be thinking of such thoughts. To be here requires goodness of heart, requires humility, requires sincerity, requires care and consideration. That is what has gotten you here one way or the other. Otherwise, the person, yes, we can have people come in who don't have this, but I tell you, they don't survive very long because it is Ishvara's laws, and this knowledge cannot survive in such a mind for too long. Therefore, even if you have no track record and nothing really taints you, no matter what you do, the person who understands the knowledge will act out of dharma. They will consider the environment. They will minimize the amount of hurt they have onto the world. So there's no question of being wise and then using that as an excuse to do something that is illegal. See, the Vedic model has this 5 elements model. And in science, we have periodic table of elements. However, the periodic table of elements doesn't quite include space and time. The 5 elements model includes your gases, solids, and liquids, but it also includes your space and time because it starts with space and you cannot think of space without time. Air, fire, water, and earth, it's basically just solids, liquids, and gases in your periodic table of elements, more or less. Now, it's not exactly the periodic table of elements, but it just wants to show you, it's just a model. Why 5? I don't know. Why not 6? I don't know. It's just a model so that you can understand how the universe came. And so from Maya comes this first element, which is space. And space, as I said, is the closest that we have to consciousness because it is attributeless, it is indivisible, it accommodates, and it never gets tainted by whatever it accommodates. And consciousness is attributeless, it never gets contaminated, it is indivisible, and it simply accommodates all things, irrespective of their attributes. The second element that comes is air. So there's a nice sequential order, but what's really important is to understand how creation creates, and that is it takes space and then it creates air, and air already becomes more dense. It's already more dense than space. And then when you create fire, it's even more dense than air. And when you create water, it's even more dense than fire. And you create earth, more dense than all of them. And all of them have an added attribute. So, for example, air has an attribute of tactile touch, tactile feedback. Okay? Which is why, and it also has the attribute of sound. Which is why air is much easier to relate with than space. Because space is like attributeless. If I say to a kid, hey, you know what space is? Yep, NASA. It's like right here, right? And their mind goes somewhere. So the subtler something is, the more the tendency is for our minds to fly off. Now imagine if you tell someone God. Man, if space goes up, God goes even farther up. Okay? Now air, now after air you have fire. And fire has the attribute of sound, tactile touch. You feel it on your skin, but also you see it. And then you get water, and then you have all of that plus taste. And then you have earth, and then you have all of that plus smell. Therefore, the easiest to relate is something that's gross. But what's interesting is, when you take any one of these elements and you combine them using permutations and combinations, it creates something more complex. For example, atom. And then I add kind of, structures to it, and then suddenly out of this atom, you have one cell. And then you combine cells together, and you have one, you have something more complex, like a neuron. And then you combine neurons together, and you have something even more complex, like a brain. So you can see how the simplicity starts, simple, 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 to more complex. For example, right now, suppose I show you something that is, fearful. And suppose 5 of your brain cells come together and they produce fear. Now, if I look into any one of those cells, can I find fear in any one of those cells? Is like fear intrinsic to the brain cell? No. But if I combine 5 of them, what happens? Suddenly you have a whole new creation, a whole new attribute of fear. So in that similar way, when you combine atoms and molecules, you don't see, a brain cell. But when you combine it in a certain way, suddenly there's a brain cell. I use this example with water. You have oxygen, you have hydrogen, and you combine 1O, 2H, and you have water. The point is, you combine certain chemicals and they can produce new complex life forms. The verse then says, what is the content from the smallest of the creations to the largest of creations? From the smallest cell all the way to the entire brain. At every level, what is the content of every single creation? And it says, existence, consciousness, is the content of all of those 5 elements which produce the entire universe of both physical forms and subtle forms, such as your subtle body. So this is the nice thing about the 5 elements model, is that from it, you can create both the physical world, but you can also create thoughts. So this means your thoughts are nothing but 5 elements. Your physical body is 5 elements. Permutations and combinations of 5 elements. And those 5 elements come from Maya. And Maya has no existence apart from the final reality. All you're ever talking about is just permutations and combinations of 5 elements. It's just like a bunch of atoms. Oh, look, pretty atom, not so pretty atom. You see, just elements. That's what it wants to show you. So by bringing this knowledge, it allows you to again have this cognitive discernment. I'm just talking and dealing with 5 elements, which are products of Maya. And Maya has no existence apart from Sat and Chit. Now, how do you show that the 5 elements, how do you show that their content is existence and awareness? Simple. Show me one thing that does not enjoy is. At every level that I mentioned, smallest cell is gone. Neuron is, neuron gone. Brain is, brain will also be gone. But what retains? Is. Therefore, the form, the nama rupa, always has a dependent reality on is. And this is as Sat. So that is the content of the universe. Careful, I'm not talking about qualified existence. For example, cup is, this is qualified existence, cup. I'm talking about that without which the cup cannot be. Cup exists. Never mind the cup. The point is it depends on existence. So that existence is what Sat is referring to. And on that same existence, you can superimpose a pen. You can superimpose a thought. You can superimpose love. You can superimpose, the sun. The whole universe gets superimposed on what? Is existence. And that existence is your nature, because everything is existence. Okay? And how else? Well, it shines. Everything that is shines. It reveals itself to me. Therefore, it is a bhati. Let's go backwards. We have forms. What are they made of according to this model? 5 elements. Just permutations and combinations of 5 elements. So now, is there something better? Suppose someone comes over and says, I don't like your skin color. You're from Africa, you're Chinese, you're this, you're that. And yet everything is made from the same 5 elements. Oh, you're big. I'm small. Oh, no. It's just combination of the 5 elements. You see this? So if I start going around, and start having this whole kind of, this is inferior, this is superior, where is my understanding? It's on the wave. It's on the mere forms. The model is showing you the whole thing is just exactly the same constituents that makes up everything. Makes up the Chinese person, makes up the insect, makes up the dog, makes up your thoughts, makes up your concern, makes up your happiness, makes up the leaf, makes up the wind, makes up the fire, makes up the space, makes up the earth, makes up the worm, makes up the food that you eat. And when you eat the food, which is made of 5 elements, it ends up adding more 5 elements onto your body, making it bigger. So the whole world is just swimming and rearranging 5 elements. And then talking, no, this 5 elements is like, and then we make a story about it. I don't like this 5 elements, I like this 5 elements. It's 5 elements. So it changes your perspective, what you're really talking about. Before, it's just all reality onto forms here and there. Now I see the underlying reality behind those forms, which is 5 elements. And the 5 elements, what are they? They are expressions of Maya Upadhi. Maya is all knowledge, all power, from which a blueprint rearranges these 5 elements to create the sun, to create planets, to create laws and orders in which all of these 5 elements, these permutations and combinations, can interact intelligently and have a harmony so that you can put a jiva on earth and you can get that jiva to work out its stuff, to work out its desires. So this means one reality is manifesting as all this. You want to call it something, it is still one reality. It all resolves into one reality. The wave resolves into the water, the ocean resolves into the water, there's nothing but water. And we've been so trained to focus on the 5 elements that by the time you hear about awareness, you also turn that into 5 elements imagination. No wonder it's hard for some. Therefore, it does require a certain level of inquiry, a certain level of practice, a certain level of coming back to this knowledge so that you can remove this notion that awareness is a thought that's supposed to be in my mind. Because that's what you've been doing all your life, just creating thoughts about everything. But awareness is the only thing that is not a thought. It is that in whose presence thoughts come and go. It is the light in whose presence thoughts are revealed and absence of thoughts are revealed also. If you were the thought, then when the thought is gone, you would also go right along with the thought. You don't. You stay right there. You are there available for the new thought to come. The thought completely goes away, and then later on you say, oh, hey, I had samadhi. I had nothing. It was beautiful. Oh, really? That was wonderful, but you were there still. That's the point. That which is there is this sat. It just simply lights up your experience. And from this sat arises this power, Maya Shakti, from whom 5 elements manifest the entire universe at once. The Big Bang, they say, We first have the Planck length and Planck time, the shortest amount of time you can measure, shortest amount of space you can measure. And in 1 millisecond, the universe expanded into trillions and trillions of kilometers in not 1 second, but 1 microsecond or something. Point is, the creation takes place like this. We're not here to analyze the details of creation because it is not my business, it is Ishwara's business.
Anyhow, creation was not in time, but time was in creation.
Time and space comes. In time and space, everything else comes. Time and space is an object of my consciousness, and since everything else is in time and space, then you don't have to analyze everything else. Just time and space, because everything depends on time and space. And since time and space depends on the seer, then by definition, you're objectifying everything at once. Not only are human beings and the world made of these 5 elements, but also, what's the content of animals? 5 elements. What's the content of angels or devas or devatas? We speak like Indra, you know, something. Hello, 5 elements. But before the knowledge, oh, wow, you're a god, you know, you're special. This is okay because devas have a different body. This is a different conversation. They have in a higher loka, more punyam, which gave them that body. But it's 5 elements. Therefore, aliens are no more a concern. Aliens, you know, aliens in different outer beings who are smarter. 5 elements. This is not a model that just applies to Earth. It is a model that applies all throughout. Everything is in this model because the model comes from the creator of the universe. And nothing's outside the creator of the universe. Therefore, this model is universally applicable. So devas and all of these things that we see, that we witness, that we see, that we hear, that we experience, that is revealed, all of this is nothing but forms, constructions of this Maya Upadi, which we give a name to differentiate from another construction, and thus we can interact intelligently in this world. Because suppose you want to call everything 5 elements. You can't operate like that. That's why we have names and forms. For non-dual understanding, do you need some kind of a special magical, you know, experience? Do you need to like reduce all forms? Do you need to like just decimate all forms? Dvaita does not contradict Advaita. Table does not contradict the wood. In other words, you can see many forms, you can understand through the model, they all resolve into the same reality Sat. Therefore, Dvaita, plurality, does not contradict Advaita. It's a wonderful tradition because in Advaita, we don't discard Advaita. And there are schools which say, no, you guys it's all the same. We don't say it's all the same. We give reality to the empirical world. We also give reality to from the reality from which the empirical world arises. So therefore, we are acknowledging the empirical world of duality, but understanding the reality behind them is that which is one without a second. Therefore, all realities get included. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Oh, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.